never believed in ghosts. That was until I experienced something so terrifying that it changed my life forever. My name is Daniel, and this is my story. It all started when I was in high school, at Maplewood High, a place with a history darker than anyone could have imagined. Maplewood High was an old school, built in the early 1900s. It had that classic, Gothic architecture, with tall spires and large, arched windows. The hallways were always cold, and the creaking of the old wooden floors was a constant reminder of the school's age. There were always rumors about the school being haunted. People said that many years ago, a student named Emily had died under mysterious circumstances in one of the classrooms. Some said she had committed suicide, while others claimed she was murdered by a teacher. The details were hazy, but the story stuck. Emily's spirit was said to haunt the school, especially the old, unused wing that had been locked up for years. My friends and I didn't believe in any of it. We thought it was just a story to scare freshmen or a tale made up by bored kids. But there was always something unsettling about that locked wing. We would often dare each other to go near it, but no one ever had the courage to go inside. It was a cold October day, just before Halloween, when everything changed. My friends, Jake, Sarah, and I were hanging out after school, trying to figure out what to do for the evening. Jake, always the thrill seeker, suggested we finally go into the locked wing. "Come on, guys," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "It's probably just a bunch of old classrooms. What's the worst that could happen?" Sarah and I hesitated, but eventually, curiosity got the better of us. We decided to break into the old wing that night. Jake had managed to get a copy of the janitor's keys, so getting in wouldn't be a problem. That night, we met outside the school, our breath visible in the cold air. The school was eerily quiet, and the shadows seemed to stretch out longer than usual. We quickly made our way to the locked wing, our footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. When we reached the door, Jake pulled out the key and, with a quick turn, the lock clicked open. The door creaked as it swung inward, revealing a dark, musty hallway that hadn't seen light in years. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay was overpowering. We stepped inside, our flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. The hallway was lined with old lockers, their doors hanging open, rusted, and forgotten. The classrooms were empty, with broken desks and chairs scattered about. It was clear that this place hadn't been touched in decades. As we moved deeper into the wing, the atmosphere grew colder. It felt like the temperature had dropped several degrees, and I could see my breath in the air. I could sense that something was wrong, but I pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to nerves. We reached the end of the hallway, where there was a large, metal door. It was different from the others, heavier, more ominous. Jake, always the brave one, decided to open it. As he pushed the door open, a wave of cold air hit us, and for a moment, I thought I heard a faint whisper. The room beyond the door was dark, but as we stepped inside, our flashlights revealed something that sent chills down my spine. There, in the center of the room, was a single desk, and on it lay an old, dusty book. The book looked ancient, its pages yellowed with age, and the cover was cracked and worn. Jake, always the curious one, walked over and picked up the book. As he opened it, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing our flashlights. We were plunged into darkness, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, and we were trapped in the pitch black. The temperature dropped even further, and I could hear the faint sound of crying, soft, sorrowful, and distant. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could barely breathe. Then, out of the darkness, a figure appeared. It was a girl, no older than 16, dressed in an old-fashioned school uniform. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were hollow, dark pits. She floated above the ground, her long, black hair flowing around her like a shadow. It was Emily. She moved closer, her eyes fixed on us, and the crying grew louder. I wanted to run, to get out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice echoing in the room. None of us could answer. We were too terrified to speak. Emily floated closer, her eyes boring into mine, and I could feel the temperature drop even further. My breath came out in ragged gasps, and I could feel the cold seeping into my bones. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice filled with sorrow. "You shouldn't have disturbed me." Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of laughter, high-pitched, hysterical laughter that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls began to shake, and the floor beneath us started to crack. The lockers in the hallway outside rattled, and the lights flickered on and off. I thought we were going to die. I thought that this was the end. But just as quickly as it had started, the chaos stopped. The laughter ceased, the shaking subsided, and the lights went out completely, leaving us in total darkness. For a moment, there was silence, an oppressive, suffocating silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, the door creaked open, and a sliver of light spilled into the room. Without thinking, we bolted for the exit, our fear driving us forward. We ran down the hallway, not daring to look back, and burst out of the old wing, slamming the door behind us. We didn't stop running until we were outside, gasping for air in the cold night. None of us spoke a word. We just stood there, trying to comprehend what had just happened. After a few moments, Jake finally broke the silence. "We need to forget about this," he said, his voice shaking. "We can't tell anyone. No one will believe us anyway." We all nodded in agreement. There was no way we could explain what had just happened, and we didn't want to be branded as crazy. So, we made a pact then and there to never speak of it again. The next day at school, everything seemed normal, but there was an unspoken tension between us. We couldn't look at each other without remembering the terror we had experienced. And even though we had agreed to forget about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had been marked by something dark and malevolent. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. I would hear footsteps behind me when I was alone, but when I turned around, there was no one there. My belongings would go missing, only to turn up in strange places. And sometimes, late at night, I would hear that same faint crying, echoing in the darkness. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew that Emily's spirit was still with us. She had been disturbed, and now she was haunting us. One night, a few weeks after our encounter, I woke up to find a message scratched into the wall next to my bed. It was written in jagged, uneven letters, and it sent a chill down my spine. "Don't come back." That was the last straw. I couldn't take it anymore. I told my parents what had happened, and they immediately pulled me out of Maplewood High. We moved to a different town, far away from that cursed place. Years have passed since that night, but I still think about it often. I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone into that old wing. Would Emily's spirit still be at peace? Or would someone else have disturbed her eventually? I'll never know for sure. But one thing is certain, there are some places that should remain undisturbed, some secrets that should stay buried. And if you ever find yourself at Maplewood High, remember this story and stay far away from the old wing, because some spirits never rest. This is the tale of a haunted school that left its mark on those who dared to disturb its dark history. The story serves as a chilling reminder that some things are better left alone, and the consequences of curiosity can be terrifyingly real.